Hey there, welcome to Let's Sit With This, a podcast for high-functioning, deeply hurting people who are ready to feel something different. I'm your host, Kristen Calloway, a licensed therapist who cares deeply about helping people heal from trauma and pain. If you're carrying a lot and tired of feeling alone with it, you're in the right place. Let's sit with this together. Hey! Today we get to talk about another favorite topic of mine, and it goes hand in hand with polyvagal theory and nervous system science. It's so powerful that I've rewritten this episode 3 times, having to cut it down each time because there is just so much to say. It's the basis for our sense of trust and safety in ourselves and others. Can you guess what it is? It's attachment. So attachment is the bond that we form with the people who care for us. It shapes how we understand safety, trust, and connection, and it starts long before we can put any of that into words. So if you've ever wondered why certain relationships feel safe and others don't, or why closeness can feel comforting or overwhelming, attachment is at the heart of that. Now, before we jump in, I want to acknowledge that talking about attachment can be confusing, stir up old pain, and maybe activating for people who didn't have positive attachment experiences growing up. It may peel back the bandages on wounds that you are working on healing, perhaps ignoring, or didn't even know were there. If you find that this topic brings up confusing or heavy feelings for you, I hope you acknowledge it with compassion or at least neutrality. Try some grounding skills. My few previous Try This episodes may help to settle your nervous system, and consider processing your experience with a licensed clinician. I really believe that you deserve to live a life healed from old pain. I'm also going to briefly talk about some harmful experiences children can have that lead to attachment wounds. No graphic details will be given, but I will use direct language, so if little ears are around, maybe wear headphones today. Now, I come to this topic both as a therapist and as a mom. I've spent years studying attachment, trauma, and healing, and I see the impact of it every day in my work. I also see it unfold in real time as I raise my own kids, watching their attachment develop, noticing little ruptures when I miss a cue, and experiencing the repair when I acknowledge, apologize, and try again. It's powerful and it matters. In my line of work, attachment is crucial to helping people heal those deep hurts. Oftentimes, chronic anxiety, depression, mood struggles, and deep insecurity have roots in attachment trauma, and most people don't see it. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into what attachment is, how it forms, and the attachment styles we can develop. This will give us the understanding of how developmental or complex trauma happens and how childhood experiences can continue to affect us as adults. Now, in my previous episode, I talked about our nervous system and our perception of safety and danger. I mentioned that sometimes what might have been a threat when we were 5 could still be affecting us in our 30s and 40s. I want to revisit that because when we talk about attachment and trauma, we have to remember that we're not just talking about memories. We're talking about how your body learned to respond to connection, closeness, and caregiving from the very beginning. My favorite quote about attachment comes from Dr. Kurt Thompson. He says, "We are all born into this world looking for someone looking for us." So from the moment we are born, we are looking for the people who are supposed to be expecting and waiting to care for us, our parents or caregivers. A newborn's brain is pretty undeveloped, so they are completely dependent on their caregivers to meet every physical and emotional need. That fairly undeveloped brain also means a complete lack of emotional regulation skills. Now, Our brains are incredibly adapted to survival, so infants are born with something called a mirror neuron system. Since babies are born as social beings, they develop in the context of relationships and they learn from observation and interaction. We see this mirror neuron mechanism in action starting a few weeks after birth when we smile at a newborn and they start to smile back, or they mimic a sound that we have made. And children continue to copy us as they grow and they learn that other people are like them. Through this back and forth interaction, a baby begins to develop their understanding of communication, behavior, and the expression of feelings. Based on the patterns a baby observes and experiences over time, this will develop into their attachment style, meaning their sense of trust and safety in themselves, others, and the world. A key building block of secure attachment on the caregiver's end is a process called attunement. So attunement means that the caregiver is able to notice, accurately interpret, and respond to the child's needs, both physical and emotional. Now, it doesn't mean perfection. It means presence. It means trying again and again to meet the child where they are. Now, thankfully, babies don't need us to get it right 100% of the time. That would be impossible, and we would all have insecure attachment styles, and the world would be on fire, right? So, for a long time, babies have one way of communicating with us, crying. And we all know that it's a super detailed and understandable method of communication, right? No. Anyone who's cared for kids knows what it's like to be up at 2 a.m. desperately rocking and swaying and feeding and singing to get an inconsolable baby to go back to sleep. We have all furiously Googled and bought way too much stuff on Amazon, hoping it may help. Just remembering this with my own 2 kids kind of makes my eye twitch and my back already starts to ache from holding that baby for way too long. So good news. Studies show that we need to be attuned and respond to a need correctly roughly 30 to 50% of the time. I'll say that again. Studies show that we need to be attuned and respond to a need correctly the first time, roughly 30 to 50% of the time. That's it. The other 50 to 70%, we need to be intentionally, lovingly trying to figure out the need or repairing a rupture. It doesn't mean that we can't be frustrated. It doesn't mean that we can't lay them down in a safe place so we can collect ourselves. It doesn't mean that we can't try everything just to have nothing work. We've all had those days. It means we try with the intent to provide appropriate comfort and care. So when a caregiver is attuned and regularly and lovingly meets an infant's needs, that infant begins to develop a secure attachment to them. They learn a sense of trust and safety, and that the world is safe and dependable. They have more positive experiences than negative ones, so they begin to develop a positive sense of self. As they grow, a securely attached child may explore more freely, return to their caregiver for reassurance, and recover more easily from distress. They generally show confidence in seeking comfort, asking questions, and showing emotion. Safety and reassurance is found when remaining with or returning to their caregiver in secure attachment. And over time, that secure attachment leads to positive self-esteem, trust in others in the world, a general positive outlook, and an innate sense of stability, structure, and order. Now, the world may still be scary at times, but they know that they can conquer it with support. From a polyvagal lens, attachment isn't just an emotional bond. It's a biological expectation. Our systems are wired to seek safety through connection. That's what has kept us alive. When that connection is disrupted or unsafe, our bodies shift into different survival states to cope. If a child's physical and emotional needs aren't consistently and lovingly met over time, insecure attachment can form. Patterns of responses that are misattuned, meaning the caregiver isn't noticing, accurately interpreting, and appropriately responding to needs, will create repetitive ruptures to the attachment, causing that caregiver not to be a place of safety and connection, but rather a source of fear and even pain. Environments filled with instability, abuse, and neglect can create a very different world for that child. An anxious attachment style can begin to form when a baby isn't sure if a caregiver will respond to their needs. They may cry louder, longer, more often, frequently seeking attention and connection, unsure when their luck will run out and they will feel alone and unseen. That uncertainty sticks with them. So as they grow, these children may cling, constantly ask for reassurance, or melt down when separated, even briefly. They often become hypervigilant about their caregiver's moods, always scanning for signs of disconnection or upset. This can evolve into people-pleasing, anxiety, or distress around perceived rejection in the school-age years or adolescence. At its core, anxious attachment is marked by the fear of abandonment and a lack of internalized safety. Over time, this can lead to low self-esteem, a deep fear of being alone, and a belief that connection must be earned or chased. Now, an avoidant attachment style can begin to form when a baby learns that expressing needs leads to rejection, punishment, or being ignored. So over time, that infant or child may start trying to meet their own needs when possible, request less, or shut down emotionally to avoid negative or harsh interactions. This creates distance from the caregiver and can look like independence on the surface, but it's often a nervous system adapting to unpredictability. As children, those with avoidant attachment might seem unusually self-sufficient or emotionally distant. They're going to suppress their needs, avoid asking for help, and act unaffected by separation. But underneath that distance is often a deep belief that connection isn't safe or dependable. As they grow, they may come to believe that they can only trust themselves, putting up walls with others to protect from further hurt. Loneliness becomes familiar and even preferable to the risk of vulnerability. Now, disorganized attachment, the fourth style, is a blend of both anxious and avoidant patterns. It can be harder to spot because it often shows up as contradictory behaviors, seeking closeness one moment and pushing it away the next. These children may want connection, but also fear it, leading to confusion in how they relate to others. Disorganized attachment often develops when a caregiver is both a source of comfort and fear, such as in homes with abuse, neglect, or chronic unpredictability. While many people have a mix of anxious and avoidant strategies, that's normal for everyone. True disorganized attachment tends to emerge from environments that felt unsafe or threatening. It's a nervous system adaptation to a caregiving relationship that wasn't reliably safe. Now, if you have kids and you're starting to panic that you have inevitably destroyed them because they exhibit some of these insecure attachment behaviors, let's take a deep breath, okay? And we're going to light a candle to honor and remember Velcro babies and dysregulated neurotic toddlers, okay? So remember, all human behavior is on a spectrum, and even the healthiest adult will have some innate anxious or avoidant tendencies. Healthy attachment means that at different stages of development, you are likely to have a clingy, mom, dad, or caregiver-only child refusing anyone else familiar and definitely unfamiliar, right? Parent preference is developmentally normal, and it often kind of switches back and forth over time. Toddlers are the cutest, most confusing, gaslighting little things. One second they are happy that you gave them blueberries, and the next second they are yelling and throwing their plate because you gave them the wrong blueberries. And heaven forbid you do anything for them in the I do it stage, right? If you broke that granola bar in half, listen, I'll send you some prayers. So, normal child development includes a lot of behaviors that you may be identifying with here. What's important is what the patterns are over time and in different environments with different people. If you have concerns, please speak with your child's doctor or a therapist specializing in children to help you assess your specific situation. Don't make any diagnoses from a podcast episode giving general information meant to be relatable to most listeners, okay? So we can see how children are completely dependent on their caregivers to provide physical and emotional safety, comfort, and stability. They rely on the caregiver to help them navigate a world that is too large to comprehend, a world where they are powerless and lack any sense of control. When a caregiver is unable to consistently meet a child's needs, or worse, becomes a source of fear or chaos, attachment wounds can form. Sometimes those missed needs come from obvious harm, like physical or sexual abuse, chronic neglect, or abandonment. These situations clearly violate a child's sense of safety. But just as often, attachment wounds come from more subtle or socially acceptable forms of misattunement. Like a parent who is always anxious or angry, a caregiver struggling with depression, addiction, or their own trauma. Maybe you were expected to be the emotional support for your parent, or you had to become the easy kid to keep the peace in your home. Maybe no one yelled, but no one noticed when you were hurting either. These experiences don't always look like trauma from the outside. The vast majority of my clients in the first couple of sessions will usually tell me, my childhood was great, my parents were great, life was perfect, right? I was loved, I got to do all the things. But your nervous system doesn't measure safety by appearances. It measures safety by attunement, by emotional availability, and by how often you felt seen, soothed, and safe. You can be well fed and deeply lonely. You can be told you're loved and still feel afraid. And those conflicting experiences are often at the root of invisible attachment wounds. So, if this is starting to stir up some feelings or memories, that makes sense. You might be connecting the dots between what your body adapted to in childhood and how it shaped your sense of safety and connection. That's part of the work, and you're doing it. These patterns didn't come out of nowhere. They formed in response to something. And it's okay if you don't remember. And while they helped you survive, they might not be helping you connect now. So if these nearly 20 minutes were a lot, and you are someone who prefers to maybe learn things visually, or you would like to look at this in a more concrete way, I have a complimentary blog post up on my website that has all of this information in written form, and I even made a little handout summarizing it. So you should be able to find my website in the show notes, but if you don't, it is www.seekingpeaceok.com/blog. In the next episode, we're going to explore how these early attachment patterns can create wounds that show up in adulthood. We'll talk more about developmental trauma, how our bodies store it, and the stories we tell ourselves to minimize it. So let's take one last deep breath together. Do a check-in. If anything is feeling activated, if anything is feeling numb, go do some grounding skills, go take care of yourself in healthy ways. And if you don't have a therapist and this episode has already brought things up, please get one. Thank you for sitting with this today. I'm really glad you made space for yourself and considered that your past might have some pain that you've been ignoring. You don't have to do this alone. Come back whenever you need to.